Hello and welcome to this latest episode of the Driving a Profit with Zero Emissions show. I'm Barbara Albert, co-CEO of 100% Renewables, a consultancy specialising in the development of climate action strategies. As more and more services are being offered digitally and as more and more devices become connected, the carbon footprint of data centres which host digital infrastructure is growing rapidly. Today we are speaking with a leading data centre provider in Australia. As well as operating energy-efficient 5-star NABERS rated data centres, they now offer an industry-leading carbon-neutral service to their customers. Joining me today is Craig Scroggie. Craig is the CEO and Managing Director of NextDC, Australia's leading data centre as a service company, and one of Australia's fastest-growing technology organisations. Craig has more than 25 years' experience in the ICT industry, having held senior positions with Symantec, Veritas Software, Computer Associates, EMC Corporation and Fujitsu. Craig currently serves as chairman of the Trobe University Business School Advisory Board and holds the position of Adjunct Professor. Hi, Craig, and welcome to the Driving That Profit with Zero Emissions show.
Hi, Barbara. Great to be here. Thank you.
Tell us about your business, Craig.
So NextDC is Australia's leading data centre as a service provider. We essentially build the underlying infrastructure that supports the growth of the digital economy. So our customers range from Australia's leading public and private enterprise organisations that house their computers in our co-location facilities rather than housing them in their own offices. Other people who build public and private cloud platforms. So everything from enterprise and government through to the largest leading cloud computing providers in the world.
So given that more and more services are being put in the cloud, the carbon footprint, of course, of data centers is increasing rapidly. So how important is sustainability for data centers in your perspective and for the IT sector in general?
Well, sustainability is important, and it's important for us as a value. But first and foremost, as it relates to the community, sustainability is important. The NextDC think about sustainability, obviously, in the communities in which we work and live. We think about sustainability as a benefit to our customers, obviously, in the long-term planning for their goals and objectives and their values in their organisations. And we think about sustainability because it can drive cost advantages and significant opportunities for organisations to improve the efficiency of their operations. So there are many aspects to the way we think about sustainability as a broad-reaching long-term strategy for the company.
Thank you. So NextDC has been carbon neutral since 2018. Why did you decide to now offer a carbon neutral service for your customers? Was that based on specific customer demand, or was that just a natural next step in your journey?
Well, data centers are growing at an exponential rate. The forecast from Gartner and IDC and others is that every 18 to 24 months, the total amount of information in our global universe doubles. So if we were just standing still every couple of years, the amount of information that we need to store, back up, protect, share is doubling. And then we're creating more information than we've ever created at any other point in time in history. So we're creating it as consumers on platforms where we're sharing and uploading content online, social media platforms like Facebook and others. And then we're downloading content at a rate that we've never done before on streaming services like Netflix and many others. So that volume of information that is really moving around requires the digital infrastructure assets to share that, make it available to consumers. Now, data centers really are the underlying digital infrastructure that manages that growth. Now, today, the power that is consumed by data centers globally is between 2 and 3% of all power in the world. And that will also equate to between 2 and 3% of all the carbon that is emitted. Now, over the next 5 years, the forecast is that as much as 20% of energy will be consumed by data centers. So why do we care? We care because over time, data centers will become a significant consumer of power overall on a global scale. And that means that our responsibility to manage carbon efficiently and to ensure that we can provide renewable sources of energy and manage the carbon as a byproduct of that is going to be important for the long term.
Definitely. And it feels like this is all the energy consumption happening in data centers is a bit hidden. If I think of myself as a consumer, I consume Netflix, I use Facebook, I use LinkedIn, and all these services, of course, require data centers to run. And of course, these data centers are hugely power hungry. So talking about your specific data centers, about your operations, obviously, it's important to reduce the footprint and the carbon emissions of data centers as much as possible. What have you done in your operations to address this problem? Specifically, I'm talking about energy efficiency. You mentioned renewables before. You're offering the whole organization is carbon neutral. What in your operations have you focused on over the past few years to try and minimize the carbon footprint as much as possible?
So if I focus on, we're obviously carbon active certified. If I start with that as a program, the reason that was important to the company is that we needed to start with our own operations. Before we thought about customers and others, we needed to take responsibility for the carbon that is produced as a result of providing data center services. So that starts at the supply chain, thinking about the construction and development of data centers, and it goes all the way through our operations. We then think about the actual efficiency of the data center. So power utilization efficiency and water efficiency are two very important measures that we think about in operating sustainable data centers. We are NABERS certified 5-star. We're one of the only operators in the country today that certifies through the government's NABERS program for having that level of efficiency and sustainability. Over time, as we build new facilities, they should become more efficient and will hopefully receive even higher recognitions of operating efficiency as a result of that. So there are many aspects in the data center. It starts with obviously being committed to offsetting our own carbon. The best carbon is carbon not produced in the first place. But obviously building buildings and having concrete as a major input cost to the development of data centers, it's something that's difficult to avoid. And there is technology that we're working to continue to integrate into our supply chain that will have a lower carbon footprint as it relates to the physical construction of our facilities. But there are many things that we can do in the day-to-day operation of the data center to ensure that we use the environment rather than use power essentially to drive high-cost cooling. So free-side energy, free cooling allows us to use the environment to cool the computers. Then also being able to tune our cooling infrastructure in order to provide the lowest possible PUE means that power bills are low and customer efficiency will be high. So then that goes right through our supply chain to water efficiency, the recycling of water, then recycling of byproducts that we use in the operation of the data center, and then recycling of our customers' equipment as well. So there's a life cycle from the beginning of the development of the data center through to supporting of customers' infrastructure right through to the recycling of ours and our customers' waste materials.
That's really interesting to hear because most organizations would think of the carbon footprint in terms of the immediate operational emissions and wouldn't necessarily take it back to the start and looking at upstream and downstream emissions and building infrastructure. So it's great to hear that NextDC is looking at its carbon footprint from such different perspectives. I wanted to ask further on a few issues that you brought up. So firstly, is there anything that can be done when you build a data center to reduce emissions? So not looking at the operational emissions, but when you build it.
There absolutely is. The first thing is the materials that we use, the design of the data center at the very beginning of the process. So we have some close university collaborations where we are sponsoring PhD candidates for research in the operational efficiency of the data center. But we're also going back a step and looking at the construction methodology and processes and materials that are used in construction as well. So the way I like to think about solving this problem, it's not as simple as saying, well, we could just sign up to be a climate active partner and really commit to offsetting carbon. That's one important piece of our strategy for carbon that can't be avoided. But as it relates to our roles and responsibilities, we have a responsibility, obviously, to reduce the amount of carbon that is produced in our supply chain. And if we really focus on the 1%, the little bit of efficiency and improvements that we can make in everything from the beginning of the design through to the construction, the type of materials that are used, the amount of power that's required, the way we use water, the recycling of waste materials, the overall energy efficiency of our facilities, our investments in renewable energy, so solar arrays on the rooftops of our buildings, and continuing to be a funding partner for PPAs for wind farms, developing battery and storage technology. All of these 1%ers together will add up to something quite significant when it comes to playing an active role in reducing the overall carbon footprint of ourselves and our customers. And the last point really is, this is a business that is about serving our customers. Everything we do is putting our customer first. Many of our largest customers, world-leading organisations, have made significant commitments not only to setting targets for reaching 100% renewable energy, but also reaching carbon neutral themselves in their operations. This is not something that any one party can do by themselves. It's something that we have to all be prepared to work together on.
Definitely, and I have a few questions on exactly how it works for customers a bit later on. Just going back to the previous question, that's great to hear that you're looking at the full life cycle in terms of construction and recycling. You mentioned previously water consumption and electricity consumption. Naturally, electricity consumption is big. I would imagine that the water consumption happens for the cooling part.
Yeah, so obviously water is an important part of the overall cooling infrastructure, but using the environment over time has become critically important as well. So as we think about just running, if you go back 10 years, data centers used to be computer rooms largely that just used chilled air, and that was pumped into a large room and that mixed with the hot air. And obviously you had to continue to increase the amount of cooling that was provided to reduce the overall temperate environment. So what we do today is that we provide containment systems that allow us to put the external cold air or cool air into data halls and then capture the hot air and evacuate the hot air through containment systems. So by taking careful care in the way that we manage airflow and that we provide support for cooling of computers, and then we capture heat and remove that from the environment, materially increases efficiency in the data center. It reduces the amount of power that's required to drive the cooling systems. And by using a sequence of fans and pumps, we're actually able to largely use the environment to provide cooling, and that reduces the energy cost and reduces, obviously, the associated carbon that's required.
Definitely. And one of the most important measures for data centers in terms of KPIs is the PUE measure that you mentioned previously. Can you briefly describe what that is?
Yeah, so ultimately the measure for us, we certify independently for our PUE. So it's the amount of power that as a base component that is required to power the customer's computers. And then you add the factor for the amount of power that is required to drive all the associated plant infrastructure that provides cooling for the computers. So the computers don't only consume their own energy, they consume energy to keep themselves cool as well. And the combination of those is the energy efficiency rating that we get, which is called a PUE. Mm-hmm. And that we measure, it's not a spot measure. A lot of people talk about PUEs they may have achieved on the coldest day in winter when you're looking at a chilly morning at 4 a.m, you may get down to a PUE that's very close to 1 because you're not running any external plant or other associated services. But that's not a true measure of power utilization, effectiveness, or efficiency over time. We're required to measure that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 365 days a year, and then take an average of our effectiveness and efficiency in the utilization of power. So when we measure it over a 12-month period, we are independently government certified to the NABERS 5-star energy efficiency level. We have higher aspirations than that. largely the achievement of that great milestone today has been not only through using great technology, but heavily tuning our facilities so that we can optimize airflow to computers and manage the containment systems that evacuate the heat. Now, as we go forward over time, we want to continue to do things like raise the operating set points in data centers where we're actually able to then rely even less on powered cooling systems. So the environment itself has a very significant role to play as it comes to the efficiency and the use of power. And smart design plays a key role in that as well. So some of the university-based research work that we are funding for PhDs today is in relation to the machine learning data that's collected for how air flows through a data center and how that's efficiently delivered to computers to cool them and provide the right operating environment.
And the 5 stars NABERS rating achievement is really a great achievement. It's this rating system that we have for the operational performance in Australia for how well buildings and data centers perform in terms of their carbon footprint and energy consumption. So it's certainly a great achievement. Just quickly touching on the solar PV installation, you mentioned that you had a really big solar array on one of your data centers.
Yeah, so solar has been an important piece of the puzzle for us right from the very beginning. Now, when we put the first solar array on our first Melbourne data centre, it was quite expensive. So the cost of doing solar 8 years ago is quite expensive. Today, we have seen, obviously, the cost of solar reduce exponentially. So there has been significant downward movement in the price of solar. As we start to deploy new solar arrays on our second and third generation of facilities, they get larger. We have more space to be able to invest in solar. Solar behind the meter is actually quite important as well, because then you're not paying the network energy costs. So being able to combine the benefit of solar without having to have the additional cost of network distribution for power is a real significant saving for customers as well. So over time, doing solar on our rooftop developments and on adjacent buildings around our data centers is important. Continuing to invest in power purchasing agreements where we act collaboratively with other buyers to fund the development of wind farms and other technology. And then ultimately, obviously, focusing on allowing our customers to opt into the work that we've done to provide the Climate Active program, so that for that carbon that we can't avoid, that we have the capacity to be able to really invest in the community so that we're capable of offsetting it.
I can see from a customer's perspective that you certainly have everything under control from a whole life cycle perspective, operational emissions, bringing energy consumption down as much as possible and offsetting the rest that you can't. So from a customer's perspective, how does it all work? So you've got this carbon neutral service offer for your clients. How does it work? What do customers need to do to opt in?
So you said we have everything under control. The way I like to think about this is that the battle that's going to be something that we have to commit to for the long term. When you are considering that over time data centers will produce or consume as much as 20% of our global power, everything that we do digitally today is driving the underlying growth in data and infrastructure. So we are going to have to play a very deliberate and conscious role as it relates to the efficiency of power systems over time. So what that means for our customers is that we had to focus on ensuring that our own operations were capable of being measured, monitored, and then offset in the first place, and that we could be independently audited to demonstrate that we could do that. Then allowing our customers to have the benefit of opting in. We are providing essentially the home for our customers' compute infrastructure and networks to live, and allowing customers to be able to move their compute infrastructure out of their office or their legacy data center that they may have managed themselves in the past into a highly energy efficient, purpose-built facility where we can not only reduce their energy consumption, provide them with a more efficient environment, but we can also allow them to opt into the work that we've done to certify Climate Active so that they can offset the carbon that they can't avoid as well. So today for a client, through our Next Neutral program, we allow customers to, through our portal, simply one click opt in to offsetting their carbon. So when a customer goes into our service management portal called NextDC, they can do that on their mobile phone or they can do that on their web console. They go to their infrastructure page and they essentially click the Next Neutral button, which allows them to opt in, and we add an offset line item where that money is then provided to the Climate Active Partners program for the investment in offset programs.
That's certainly fantastic from a customer's perspective, specifically for the ones that are also looking to seek Climate Active certification. Because one of the big ticket items, of course, for any organization is its IT footprint. So firstly, it's great that it's being outsourced to such an efficient data center such as NextDC, because you're able to offer probably more efficient services than customers could themselves. So that's a good starting point. But then to know exactly what the carbon footprint is of the associated IT operations, and to be able to purchase that as a carbon neutral input for your customers is great in their journey to go climate active carbon neutral. So how do they know? How do your customers know exactly what their energy consumption is and what the associated carbon footprint is, and then making that carbon neutral? How exactly does it work?
Well, that's a very important question as it relates to customers being able to understand their current state. You can't manage what you don't measure. So the first thing is ensuring our customers know how much power they're consuming. So our telemetry platform, which sits within our NextDC service management product, allows customers to see their power consumption in real time. So a customer can look on their phone, see how much power they're consuming in any of their racks or their overall infrastructure. They may have a pod or a larger scale data center. They can view individual power consumption by rack, or they can view that across their entire footprint. That allows them not only to view their energy efficiency, but manage how that load is distributed across their compute. There are a number of other things that platform allows them to do, not only to manage their power efficiency, but see their infrastructure, to remotely lock and unlock their racks. They can get the power, temperature, and humidity telemetry data. So not only do they get power in real time, but they get their temperature and humidity data in real time, which helps them understand the environment and how efficient it is. So we're using that real-time telemetry data as well to manually tune. So we capture that in the context of looking at the overall machine learning data. How do we fine-tune the data center to help our customers be more efficient? Mm-hmm. But the customers themselves can actually play an active role in monitoring how their infrastructure is operating. As an example, where they may have power hotspots, and they're able then to manage their infrastructure in a way that would smooth out any inefficiencies in their design. And that's something that obviously we're capturing today and analysing of the data. And over time, we'd like that to be an automated service. If you think going from ML type technology where you're capturing and analysing the information, then taking manual intervention against that, moving to being able to provide the customer with the ability to have AI capability so that they can set parameters that would allow the data center to make decisions on their behalf.
Could that tie into something like demand response as well?
Yeah, those type of programs I think are important. Everything that we can do in order to think about electricity as an overall grid and how it functions and how we manage the supply of energy over time is critically important. DR programs are an element of the industry, particularly, we are very, very aware in Australia in summer in peak conditions where people go home and turn on their air conditioners and LCD TVs and other devices, and that puts great pressure on the existing infrastructure. We are going to have to invest in larger scale new generation power over time. I certainly hope that the majority of that is renewable, but we have challenges in the baseload context because renewable energy, the wind doesn't blow all day and the sun doesn't shine all the time. So we have to have supporting infrastructure like battery technology. We have to support it with other sources of generation. Gas, obviously hydrogen is another important area of investment and development for us, particularly in this country, to take advantage of. So again, this comes back to there not being a single answer. There are many important pieces of the puzzle, back to the 1%ers style of analogy, where we say, if we do a lot of little things over time, they'll all add up to have a very, very big impact on our overall sustainability strategy.
What a wonderful statement, Craig. It's certainly true. There is no silver bullet. We have to work from so many different angles to make net zero emissions happen. So going back to the customers, you mentioned how easy it is, how transparent your solution is. Your customers just have to tick a box and they're carbon neutral. A big consideration for your customers would obviously be the associated costs with going carbon neutral. Is that a big cost that has to be factored in? How does this work?
Yeah, it's actually quite a small cost. So, a couple of dollars on a kilowatt basis, that is a very small cost in the context of your overall bill. The way we wanted customers to be able to think about this was the same way that all of us have been able to do something quite important over time, and that is that if we ever travelled, you booked a ticket for a plane, and at the end of that service, when you booked your ticket and looked at your seat and done all those things, you were able to just to choose to opt in to offset the carbon there, and it was as simple as ticking a line item and a few dollars was added to your ticket. So we wanted the same experience, which would be a seamless one for our customers. We wanted the customer to be able to make the decision in real time, and say when they were adding a service, they could do something as simple as say, look, a few dollars for opting into these programs on a kilowatt basis would be something that they felt was very insignificant in the context of the cost of the service, but very important in terms of the role that they can play and the influence that all of our customers can have in playing their little part along with us to help reduce carbon.
I love this multiplying effect that this has on how our economy operates, because you start offering the service and then there's take-up in the market. Organizations start to think more about their carbon emissions and what they can do to reduce it. So you launched this service for your customers a couple of months ago. How was it received in the market?
It's been outstanding. It's wonderful to have customers write to us and say how great it is. They just didn't have really, a lot of our clients are going to be smaller enterprises, and they haven't had the capacity to be able to really look at these elements in their own right, making it very simple for clients to be able to say, yeah, look, we now know that we can participate, we can actually do something about that. For a lot of organisations, making it easy was the key component. Many of our customers, some of the world's largest companies, actually have very, very mature energy efficiency, power buying practices within their business. And if you're a big global company, you are going to be focused on sustainability. And the pressure to focus on sustainability is coming from all of our stakeholders. We're an ASX 100 publicly listed company. Over the course of the last decade, since we're a startup, the organisation has grown to a size and scale today where we've billions of dollars invested in our digital infrastructure and network around Australia. We had to make the decision that we felt that this was a priority for us. So environmental sustainability has become one of our key priorities as a company. That wasn't the case. We were passionate and felt that sustainability was important years ago, but it's now become something that's so critically important. We have to lead with it as a key element of our strategic priorities. If we do that, and it's important to our customers, together we can both make a difference.
That's an amazing story. Talking about storytelling, you've got this beautiful story of your energy efficiency effort, renewables effort, carbon neutral, offsetting, offering this service to the market. When you told the story to the market, how has that been received in media and traditional and social media? Is there much talk about this offer? And how has it elevated your brand?
If you do all the work and customers don't take advantage of that, either they've already solved the problem themselves, so we didn't need to do it in the first place, or they're not interested. And I don't think either of those was true. So what we've seen is customers say, look, we didn't have an answer to the problem. Thank you for helping us be able to take some action and do something. And the second element ultimately is that I think people are genuinely committed to doing something when you can help them make that a choice. So for us, really putting ourselves in a position where we could help customers solve the problem and make it seamless was the number one priority. Frictionless experience for clients is pretty important today. We want to remove complexity in all of our lives, in everything that we do. In a lot of cases, we all are very fortunate as consumers, because if you're on a social media platform, you're downloading services, you're watching videos, it all seems so simple. And that's because largely the UX experience for the consumer is very much focused on low touch. In the enterprise, the more complex the organisation is, the more mission critical the infrastructure is, the more data sovereignty and compliance and legislative risk, all of these matters that come with larger companies, publicly listed companies, government departments, that makes it harder for them to make these choices and do it quickly. So we just wanted to be in a position where we could help solve the problem. Customer demand and customer uptake ultimately tells you whether you've got the program working in the right way.
This relentless focus on innovation is just a sign of how mature your organization is in terms of thinking about sustainability and climate change and tackling emissions. It's great to hear that. You mentioned earlier, Craig, about the focus that NextDC has on sustainability and making sure that it's doing its part, and that sustainability is one of your core values. I would like to know how this affects your staff. Do your staff, as a result of all your efforts, feel more empowered? Are they proud of being part of NextDC? Do you see them as brand ambassadors? Just trying to get a sense here of how staff has received all your efforts.
I think that's probably one of the most important things that we want to continue to consider as it relates to attracting and retaining great people. I mean, at the end of the day, the company is only as successful as the quality of the people that it can attract and retain. Giving those people the opportunity to do something meaningful in the communities in which they work and live is hugely important. Sustainability is something that I think, in the most part, everybody wants to be able to play a role. For the majority of our employees today, and as a larger company, as we've grown over time, we've been able to afford to prioritise those decisions. When you're a little startup and you're a bit scrappy, and you're struggling to survive, and you want to be a challenger, and you're trying to create a legitimate business and win the trust of customers, you really got to focus on the main game. It doesn't mean that our focus on being the best builder and operator of data centers in the world. I mean, our vision is to help our customers harness the digital age, and our purpose is to be the most efficient data center operator in the world. Now, those two things are still hugely important, but for all the people that wake up every day doing something great at NextDC, they want to know that the impact they're having on the environment is as light as it can possibly be. So over time, it is going to be a critically important priority for us to continue to listen to our staff, to build programs that allow them to participate in the community. So one thing that I really enjoy is seeing where our team members have been able to get out and participate in the Climate Active program, plant trees, make a difference, and that goes right across our value set, whether it's just supporting our charities and supporting those sustainability programs. If you want to attract and retain the best people, you've got to be focused on a lot more than just the technical aspects of roles and good pay today. You've got to give people the ability to be able to make a positive influence in their communities. And I hope that, we are doing that. And I think that the feedback I get from the team is that we're doing a good job, and we've got to continue to do more in these areas.
That's fantastic to hear. Thanks, Craig. Just one final question that I have would relate around your physical climate risks. So we talked a lot about sustainability and climate change and emissions, but then of course there's the threat of physical climate change, as in severe weather events, for instance. So I'm thinking specifically an increased number of really hot days, storms, water shortages, and obviously all these threats impact the operations of a data center. I would imagine that one of your biggest KPIs that you would have internally is your uptime, and you can't ever have like a business disruption, such as, for instance, a power outage. So given that we have climate change here already that is going to become more severe in future, how are you dealing with those physical climate change risks, and what is your plan to mitigate against those threats?
Those physical risks essentially are the table stakes of data centers. That's really where we start. So when you think about protecting customers' infrastructure and building business continuity and resiliency into operations, the first one is ensuring that the data center is always on and always available. So we certify to the highest standard in the world. The Uptime Institute, the independent body who certified data centers, the highest standard is Tier 4. We started with our first generation of facilities building Tier 3, which essentially is a concurrently maintainable facility. We moved to what today at Tier 4 is called fault tolerant, so the highest standard in the world. Floodplains, flight paths, bushfire risks, earthquakes, cyclones, all of these, wherever you are in the world today, the thing that I guess I reflect on over the course of the last 12 months is 2020 was a challenging year. But in January, particularly in Australia in 2020, we started the year with the worst bushfires that we'd ever seen. And then in February, we had some of the worst flooding that we'd seen. And just to cap it off, if record fires and record floods weren't the hat trick, really pulling it all together was the largest pandemic that we've ever seen in our lifetime. Those risks are ones that essentially we think are table stakes for the data center industry. We've got to do all of those things really well. The point that you made around power and availability, we build the data centers essentially to operate in what we call island mode. So building to the highest standard, having the lowest operating PUEs so that the cost is minimised for our customers. We can operate far more efficiently than clients can in their own buildings. And then going out to do things at scale that we can do. Then there's the not only sort of moving on from the pandemic risks and all of the other sort of physical components. There's more instability in the geopolitical environment that we've seen in recent times. So nation state issues, you've got foreign actors with cyber threats, you have really issues of protecting data, encrypting it, data sovereignty, the government and the laws of which the information, wherever it should reside, is subject to. These are all emerging areas that need to be managed in the context of risk management. So we see the physical ones largely as table stakes for what we do. The emerging ones are equally important and going to continue to be issues of cyber, both physical and digital security. And the last one ultimately really is bringing it all together with ensuring that we operate our facilities in the most sustainable way that we possibly can.
It's fantastic to hear. So given your experience with managing both the physical and transition climate risks, what would be your 3 key takeaway messages for organizations who are looking to embark down on this path? Organizations who are possibly looking at also going net zero and managing the climate risks. What are the top barriers, the top solutions, the top 3 key takeaway messages you'd like to give other organizations?
Yeah, look, I like to keep it simple. Those 3 things are very, very simple pieces. The first one is start. Do something. It actually doesn't really matter where you start, but when you think about the operations, the sustainability of what you do, looking for partners that can assist you, you don't have to spend the next 3 years thinking about all of the elements of a sustainability strategy. Start somewhere, look at the areas in your supply chain that you can have the most influence over and choose something to make a difference on. So that's the first one, do something. The second one is that there are a lot of people out there that would love to help. So if you're an organisation, as an example, that is looking for Climate Active certification, you can talk to the relevant stakeholders at Climate Active in the government department. You can go to NABERS for assistance with energy efficiency, benchmarking and certification. You can talk to independent providers who measure energy efficiency and will help you build strategies to reduce the amount of power you consume. And then importantly, if you're a customer that builds IT infrastructure, you're a cloud service provider, you're an enterprise, you can talk to a company like ours and we can help you opt into programs that allow you to offset your carbon and also reduce your energy footprint. So the second one really is that there are many people that want to make a difference in this area. Reach out to someone and just start having a conversation on what action that you can take that will make a difference. My last advice really is that this is not something that will ever be done. So don't try and solve it all in one go. I know as a company that we started out with very small strategies, like just wanting to have renewable energy as an input to our business. Over time, we've got better at managing airflow. We've got better at reducing our PUE. And a lot of that's had to be manual. Over time, we've introduced partnerships with universities for what we can do to sponsor PhD candidates into measuring the energy efficiency of how data centers operate. And now we'll produce some IP as a result of that, and we'll share it in the industry and with others that will all benefit from that. We've got customers who are helping us as well. We're sharing our intellectual property with clients about not only how we operate our data centers, but how they operate theirs as well. So the last piece really comes down to looking at this with a long-term view. This won't be something that is ever done. It will always be a work in progress. And every day, every month, every year, we learn something new and we just continue to build that into our long-range goal. And if we do a good job and we achieve a few things this year, it will put us a step closer to our long-range plan of getting to 100% renewable energy and being able to not only be committed to 100% offset ourselves, but my long-term goal is to have 100% of our customers opted into offset as well. If we achieve that, it'll be a great outcome. If we achieve a little, it'll also be a great outcome.
I certainly hope that you will achieve the outcome that you're wishing for, that 100% of your customers opt into this wonderful service that you're providing here. Thank you so much for those tips. So organizations that are not currently customers, how can they get in touch with you to avail themselves of this offer that you have?
Yeah, our website, basically. Just drop us a line, go on to nextdc.com, reach out to us and ask for someone to talk to. We can share our own experiences and strategy. We can help customers or talk to potential new customers, or just share our experience in the industry. This is a community. It takes a community to make a difference in these areas. We don't make money out of providing these services. We do that as an element of providing an efficient business and being a responsible citizen as far as our community support work is required. So, it's important, you don't have to be buying something for us to reach out and ask to learn from the experiences that we've had. We love to help our customers, but we also understand that playing our part in the community can help other people learn from the experiences that we've had as well.
It's a fantastic learning opportunity. Look, I really appreciated having you on my show. I learned so much about data centers and what it means to run an efficient and clean and renewable data center, looking to continually improve its performance and offering superior service to its customers. Thank you so much for those insights, and thank you very much for joining me on my show.
It was great to talk with you, Barbara. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Craig. That was Craig Scroggie, CEO of NextDC, talking about their journey to net zero emissions and how they're helping their customers achieve carbon neutrality. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next episode.